I never thought I'd have to stand up to my father. Growing up, his word was law in our house, a reality I accepted without question. His commanding presence filled every room, and his financial success cast a long shadow that I always felt I lived in. But as I sat across from him that afternoon in his mahogany-paneled home office, something inside me finally began to crack. "Don't argue. Transfer next month's payment too," my father shouted, his voice echoing against the walls of his pristine office. His eyes were fixed on his computer screen, not even bothering to look at me. "The company needs the cash flow." My stomach tightened as I gripped my phone, the banking app already open. This wasn't the first time he'd demanded I transfer money from my personal savings to prop up the family business. A business where I worked 60-hour weeks as the financial controller, but was treated like an ATM rather than a daughter or employee. "Dad, I've already transferred this month's amount," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. That was the agreement. Next month's payment would completely drain my savings account. He finally looked up, his expression a mixture of annoyance and dismissal. "Emma, this is family, the business your grandfather built. You think your little savings account matters more than that legacy?" I felt that familiar wave of guilt wash over me. For years, it had been his most effective tool, making me feel selfish for having boundaries, for wanting anything for myself. I understand that, but no buts. He cut me off, waving his hand as if swatting away an irritating fly. "I need that money by the end of the day. Your brother already contributed his share without complaint." Of course he had. Michael never complained because Michael never paid. My father would loan him money constantly, forgetting about repayment while keeping meticulous track of every penny I was expected to contribute. But that was how it had always been. Michael was the golden child destined to take over the company someday, while I was the reliable workhorse expected to sacrifice without recognition. I looked around his office at the framed photos, my father and Michael at fishing trips, golf tournaments, business dinners. I was conspicuously absent from the walls, despite being the one who had actually majored in finance and spent the last 5 years keeping the company books balanced. "I'll see what I can do," I finally said, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. My father had already returned his attention to his computer, dismissing me without a word. As I walked out, I passed the main conference room where Michael sat, feet up on the table, laughing into his phone. He gave me a casual wave without interrupting his call. The drive back to my apartment was a blur of emotions. I'd given so much to this company. My education, my expertise, my savings. Even breaking up with Jason 2 years ago when my father made it clear that my relationship was distracting me from company priorities. And what had I received in return? A salary below market rate, endless demands for family contributions, and the constant reminder that I would never be seen as an equal to my brother. When I arrived home, I sat in my parked car, unable to make myself go inside. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. "Money. Today." Not even a please, just an order, as if I were still a child. Something shifted in me in that moment. I remembered the conversation I'd had with our company accountant last week, when he'd privately expressed concerns about some of the financial decisions my father had been making. "Emma, if anyone else was looking at these books, they'd have questions," he'd said carefully. I'd brushed it off then, but now I pulled out my laptop right there in the car and logged into the company's financial system. As the financial controller, I had access to everything: accounts, transfers, investments. I began pulling reports, downloading statements, examining transactions from the past 3 years. What I found made my blood run cold. My father had been moving money between accounts in ways that, while not exactly illegal, definitely skirted ethical boundaries. He'd been inflating company assets when seeking loans, minimizing them for tax purposes, and, most shocking to me, diverting significant company funds to personal investment accounts under his and Michael's names. No wonder the company always seemed to need my contributions. That night, I didn't sleep. I compiled everything I found into organized folders, backing up copies to my personal cloud storage. By morning, I had a complete picture of years of financial manipulation and a decision to make. I called in sick to work the next day, something I'd never done before. Instead, I met with a financial advisor who specialized in family businesses. I didn't share the specific documents, just outlined the situation hypothetically. His advice was clear. Family businesses can be emotional minefields, but numbers don't lie. If you're uncomfortable with what you're seeing, you need to address it directly. Easy for him to say. He didn't know my father. For the next week, I continued working as normal, transferring only the amount we had originally agreed upon, not the extra payment my father demanded. He sent increasingly angry texts, which I responded to vaguely. Working on it, or looking into options. Each night, I refined my understanding of the company's financial situation. What became increasingly clear was that my father's mismanagement was putting the company at risk. The business my grandfather had built, that employed 35 people in our community, was being hollowed out by my father's and brother's entitlement. On Friday afternoon, my father called me into his office again. My brother was there too this time, lounging in one of the leather chairs with that perpetually amused expression he wore when he knew I was in trouble. "You've ignored my requests," my father said, leaning forward on his desk. "That's unacceptable, Emma. This company has given you everything." "Actually, Dad, I've given this company everything," I replied, surprising myself with how steady my voice was. "And I've been looking at exactly what this company has been giving in return." My father's expression darkened. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I've been reviewing our financial records, all of them." My brother sat up straighter, the smirk fading from his face. "As the financial controller, that's my job," I continued. "And I've found some concerning patterns that I think we need to discuss." "You're overstepping," my father said, his voice dropping to that dangerous quiet tone I recognized from childhood confrontations. "The financial decisions of this company are not your concern beyond the tasks assigned to you." "That's where you're wrong," I said, pulling out a folder from my bag. "As a financial controller, I have a legal and ethical responsibility to ensure the company's financial reporting is accurate and compliant. And as someone whose personal finances have been repeatedly tapped to support this company, I have every right to understand where that money is going." I opened the folder and placed a document on his desk, a summary of the personal investment accounts that company funds had been diverted to. "Would you like to explain this?" The silence that followed was deafening. My father stared at the document, his face unreadable, while Michael stood up and walked over to look over our father's shoulder. His face paled as he recognized his own investment account numbers. "You had no right to dig into this," my father finally said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "I had every right and responsibility," I replied. "Dad, you've been treating this company like a personal piggy bank while demanding that I contribute more and more of my own savings. Did you think I wouldn't eventually notice?" My father leaned back in his chair, studying me with new eyes, not as his daughter, but as a threat. "What exactly do you want, Emma?" It was the first time he'd ever asked me that question. What did I want? I'd never really allowed myself to consider it before. "I want several things," I said, pulling out another document from my bag. "First, I want a formal agreement that my personal contributions to the company will be treated as investments with proper documentation and return schedules, not as gifts or obligations." My brother scoffed. "Is that all? You're making a big deal over—" "I'm not finished," I interrupted, something I'd never done before. Michael's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Second, I want a complete restructuring of the company's financial governance. No more personal expenses through company accounts, no more undocumented transfers. Everything above board and compliant with standard accounting practices." My father's jaw tightened. "You forget who owns this company, Emma." "I'm well aware," I replied. Which is why my third condition is a reevaluation of my role and compensation. If I'm going to continue as financial controller with the added responsibility of cleaning up this mess, I want market rate compensation and a stake in the company. A stake? My father let out a humorless laugh. Your brother is the heir to this company. That's always been the plan. The plan needs to change, I said simply. Unless you'd prefer I take these documents to the IRS and let them decide how to restructure things. It was a bluff, partly. I didn't want to destroy the company or my family, but I was done being exploited and dismissed. My father's face flushed with anger. You would threaten your own family after everything we've done for you? What exactly have you done for me, Dad? I asked quietly. You've paid me below market rate for years of professional work. You've demanded access to my personal savings whenever it suited you. You've never once acknowledged my contributions while celebrating every minor thing Michael does. My brother shifted uncomfortably in his peripheral vision. Good. Let him squirm. I'm not threatening the family, I continued. I'm trying to save the company, and maybe our relationship in the process. But that can't happen if you continue to treat me as less valuable than Michael, or if you keep using the company as your personal ATM. My father stared at me for a long moment, then looked at the documents again. I could almost see the calculations happening behind his eyes, weighing the cost of giving me what I wanted against the risk of what I might do if he refused. I'll need time to consider this, he finally said. I nodded and stood up. Take the weekend. I'll expect your answer on Monday. As I turned to leave, my father called after me. Emma. I paused at the door. How long have you been planning this? I turned back. I haven't been planning anything, Dad. I've been doing my job and hoping that someday you'd see my value without me having to demand it. I'm done waiting. The weekend was the longest of my life. I alternated between feeling powerful and terrified, between certainty that I was doing the right thing and guilt that I was betraying my family. My phone remained silent. No angry texts from my father. No cajoling calls from Michael trying to smooth things over as he sometimes did when our father was particularly difficult. By Sunday night, I'd made peace with all possible outcomes. If my father agreed to my terms, I would work harder than ever to help the company succeed properly and ethically. If he fired me, I had enough documentation to ensure a fair severance and plenty of marketable skills to find a new position. And if he called my bluff about reporting the financial irregularities, well, I wasn't entirely sure what I would do, but I knew I wouldn't back down. Monday morning arrived with a heavy sky-threatening rain. When I walked into the office, the receptionist gave me an odd look, but said nothing. My assistant wasn't at her desk, which was unusual. As I approached my office, I saw my father standing in the doorway, waiting. Good morning, I said, projecting a confidence I didn't entirely feel. My office. Now, he replied, turning without waiting for my response. I followed him down the hallway, past curious eyes peeping over cubicle walls. News traveled fast in small companies, and though no one knew the details, they could sense the tension. When we reached his office, I was surprised to see not just Michael inside, but also our company's lawyer and the external accountant we used for audits. My stomach dropped. Had my father decided to try and legally intimidate me? Sit down, Emma, my father said, gesturing to the empty chair in front of his desk. The others were arranged in a semicircle that made me feel like I was facing a tribunal. I sat, keeping my expression neutral despite my racing heart. I've spent the weekend reviewing the concerns you raised, my father began formally, along with Mr. Davidson and Mr. Phillips here. He nodded toward the lawyer and accountant respectively. And after careful consideration, I've made some decisions about the future of this company. Here it comes, I thought, bracing myself. You were right. Those 3 words hung in the air, so unexpected that for a moment I thought I'd misheard. The financial practices you identified are problematic, he continued. looking uncomfortable but determined. While I've always acted with the company's long-term interest in mind, I can see how the methods have become irregular. The external accountant, Mr. Phillips, cleared his throat. What your father is trying to say, Emma, is that we've agreed the company needs a more structured financial governance system. Your recommendations are sound. I looked between them, waiting for the other shoe to drop. And my other conditions? My father sighed. Your personal contributions will be properly documented as investments going forward, with appropriate return schedules. He slid a document across the desk, a formal agreement already drawn up by the lawyer. As for your compensation and role, he hesitated, and Michael jumped in. We want to make you CFO, my brother said, surprising me, with a proper salary adjustment and a 15% equity stake. I blinked, stunned. 15%? From my share, my father clarified. Michael will retain his 30%. I'll go down to 55%. It was more than I'd expected. Much more. Why? I couldn't help asking. My father looked at me directly, something shifting in his expression. Because you were right about something else too. I haven't recognized your value to this company. I've been traditional in my thinking about succession and leadership. He glanced at Michael. Your brother and I had a long talk this weekend about his actual interest in running this business someday. Michael had the grace to look sheepish. Turns out I don't have the head for finance that you do, sis. Never have. I'm better at sales and client relationships. We need both, my father acknowledged. This company needs both of you, in the roles you're actually suited for. I was too stubborn to see that. It wasn't quite an apology, but from my father, it was close. There's one more thing, my father added, reaching into his desk drawer. He pulled out a check and handed it to me. It was for the exact total of all the contributions I'd made to the company over the years. This should clear our personal accounts. I stared at the check, tears unexpectedly blurring my vision. It wasn't just the money. It was the acknowledgement that what had been taken from me wasn't right or fair. So, my father said, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain, do we have an agreement? I looked up at him, seeing for the first time in years not the intimidating figure who had dominated my life, but an aging man who had made mistakes and was trying, in his limited way, to correct them. We do, I said, extending my hand to shake his. But this is just the beginning of the changes we need to make. As we shook hands across his desk, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, the weight of seeking approval I would never get, of accepting treatment I didn't deserve. My father might never be the emotionally supportive parent I'd wished for, but he had finally seen me as a professional worthy of respect, and that was a start. The transition wasn't smooth. I never expected it would be. Old habits die hard, especially when they're rooted in decades of family dynamics. My father still occasionally slipped into his commanding tone during meetings, and Michael sometimes forgot that I was now his equal in the company hierarchy. Not just his little sister who could be charmed or dismissed, but something fundamental had shifted, and we all felt it. 2 weeks after our agreement, I was settling into my new office, the corner space that had previously belonged to our retiring operations manager. It had windows on 2 sides and actual privacy, a far cry from my previous workspace with its half-glass walls that had allowed my father to monitor me throughout the day. I was organizing my files when Michael appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame with his usual casual posture. Nice digs, he said, glancing around appreciatively. Definitely an upgrade. Thanks, I replied, still feeling slightly awkward in our new professional dynamic. Did you need something? He hesitated, which was unusual for my normally confident brother. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something. He closed the door behind him and took a seat across from my desk. I owe you an apology, he said, meeting my eyes directly. I set down the files I was holding. For what specifically? I asked, not unkindly, but not making it easy for him either. Michael sighed. For a lot of things. For taking advantage of the way Dad favored me. For accepting credit for work you did. For not standing up for you when Dad was being unfair. He ran a hand through his hair. I knew what was happening, Emma. I just found it easier to go along with it. His candor surprised me. Why the sudden conscience? It wasn't sudden, he admitted. I've felt guilty for years, but it was easier to pretend everything was fine. When you confronted Dad with those documents, it forced me to face some uncomfortable truths about myself too. I studied my brother's face, looking for signs of the manipulation he'd often used to get his way. But all I saw was genuine remorse. I appreciate that, Michael, I said finally. But rebuilding trust takes time and actions, not just words. I know. He nodded. That's why I brought you this. He pulled a folder from his bag and placed it on my desk. It's a list of clients I've been managing who would be better served under your division. They're all financial services companies that need the kind of expertise you have. I've already spoken to them about transitioning to you as their primary contact. I opened the folder, scanning the list of clients, several of whom were among our most profitable accounts. You're giving up these clients? Not giving up, he corrected. Transitioning to where they belong. You're better qualified to handle their needs. I should have done this years ago. It was a significant professional gesture, one that would affect his performance metrics and, by extension, his bonuses. Thank you, I said, genuinely moved by this tangible demonstration of respect. There's something else, Michael added, looking even more uncomfortable now. Those investment accounts you found, the ones Dad set up for me, I've closed them and transferred everything back to the company. It wasn't right, and I knew it wasn't right when I accepted it. I leaned back in my chair, truly surprised now. Dad agreed to that? He didn't have much choice after I told him I was doing it with or without his blessing, Michael said with a small smile. I think you've inspired a bit of backbone in me, sis. For the first time in years, I felt a genuine connection with my brother. Not the obligatory family bond, but something closer to respect, and maybe even the beginnings of real friendship. So, he continued, standing up, I was thinking we could grab lunch today. I'd like to hear your ideas for restructuring the financial governance systems. I should probably understand that better if I'm going to be selling our services effectively. I'd like that, I replied, realizing I meant it. As the weeks passed, the company began to transform. With proper financial governance in place, we were able to provide more accurate projections to our clients, which in turn led to better results and increased trust. My team, now properly resourced and supported, developed innovative financial models that attracted new business. Michael, freed from pretending to understand complex financial details, excelled in client relationship management and business development. But my father remained a complex figure in this new arrangement. He had kept his word regarding the formal changes we'd agreed upon, but emotionally, he remained distant and occasionally resentful. I often caught him watching me during meetings with an unreadable expression, and he rarely sought my input unless absolutely necessary. One Thursday afternoon, about 2 months after our confrontation, my assistant informed me that my father wanted to see me in his office immediately. The request came during a critical analysis I was completing for our largest client, and the timing felt deliberately inconsiderate. When I arrived at his office, the door was closed, unusual for my father, who typically liked to maintain line of sight to the entire floor. I knocked and heard his gruff, "Come in." He was standing by the window, looking out at the city skyline. Without turning, he said, "Close the door behind you." My guard immediately went up. Was this the moment when he would try to reassert control? Had he found a loophole in our agreement? "I received a call today," he said, still facing the window. "From Westmore Financial. I recognized the name immediately. One of the largest financial services firms in the region, and a company we had unsuccessfully pitched to several times over the years. They're interested in acquiring us. The statement hung in the air between us. An acquisition would change everything. Our independence, our company culture, potentially our jobs. What did you tell them? I asked carefully. That I needed to discuss it with my executive team, he replied, finally turning to face me. Which includes you. It was a small acknowledgement, but it meant something coming from him. They're offering a significant premium, he continued, sliding a document across his desk toward me. 30% above market valuation. I glanced at the numbers and felt my breath catch. It was a generous offer, one that would set my father up for a very comfortable retirement and would represent life-changing money for Michael and me with our respective ownership stakes. Why now? I wondered aloud. Apparently, word has gotten around about our new financial governance systems and the innovations your team has implemented, my father replied, and I detected a note of pride in his voice that I hadn't heard directed at me before. Westmore has been looking to strengthen their internal financial controls, and they see us as having expertise they need. I looked up from the document to find my father watching me intently. What do you think? He asked, and I realized with a jolt that he was genuinely seeking my opinion, not just going through the motions. I think we need to consider it carefully, I replied. The offer is strong financially, but we need to understand their intentions for the company post-acquisition. Would we maintain operational independence? What happens to our employees? What roles would you, Michael, and I have in the new structure? My father nodded, looking thoughtful. Those are the right questions. He pulled up a chair and sat down across from me, not at his imposing desk, but in the casual seating area of his office, a space he typically reserved for his most valued clients and associates. I've been thinking a lot about the future of this company, he said, about my legacy, and about what happens when I eventually step back. And what have you concluded? I asked, curious about where this was going. That I haven't been fair to you, he said directly. The admission stunned me into silence. My father wasn't a man who acknowledged mistakes easily, if ever. I had fixed ideas about who should lead this company after me, he continued. Ideas based more on tradition than on aptitude or commitment. The truth is, Emma, you've demonstrated more genuine care for this company and its future than I gave you credit for. He leaned forward, his expression more open than I could remember seeing it in years. When you confronted me with those documents, my first reaction was anger. Not because you were wrong, but because you were right. And because it forced me to see that I'd been making decisions based on what was convenient rather than what was correct. I didn't know how to respond. This vulnerability from my typically stoic father was unfamiliar territory. The acquisition offer gives us options, he continued. If we accept, we all walk away with significant financial security. If we decline, we continue building something meaningful together. Something that I now realize you're better positioned to lead than I previously acknowledged. What are you saying exactly? I asked, needing clarity. I'm saying that regardless of what we decide about Westmore's offer, I'm accelerating my succession planning, and I'm revising who I believe should eventually lead this company. My heart raced. You're considering me? I'm not just considering it, he replied. I'm recommending it to the board at our next meeting. You've earned it, not through family connection, but through competence and commitment. Tears pricked at my eyes, but I blinked them away, not wanting to undermine this professional moment with emotion. Michael agrees, my father added, surprising me further. In fact, it was partly his idea. He suggested I take over as CEO someday. My father nodded. He said, and I quote, "Emma has always been the brains of this operation. I'm just the pretty face that brings in the clients." He has no illusions about his strengths and limitations. I couldn't help but laugh at that typically Michael self-assessment. And what would his role be? Chief Revenue Officer, focusing exclusively on client acquisition and relationship management, the things he excels at, my father explained. You two would make a formidable leadership team, with complementary skills. I sat back, processing this unexpected turn. For so long I had fought just to be seen, to have my contributions valued. I had never dared to imagine that my father would actually see me as his successor. We don't have to decide about Westmore today, my father said. But I wanted you to know where I stand before we begin those discussions. Whatever we decide, it will be a family decision, one where your voice carries equal weight to mine. Thank you, I said simply, the words inadequate for what I was feeling. My father nodded, then hesitated before adding, There's something else I should tell you. Something I should have told you years ago. He looked down at his hands. Your grandfather, the man who built this company, he wanted you to have a significant role here. He saw something in you, even when you were young. He did? I had vague memories of my grandfather before he passed when I was 10, a kind man who would let me sit in his office and help him with his paperwork. He told me once that you had the same meticulous attention to detail he did, my father continued. The same careful consideration before making decisions. He said those qualities were why he succeeded, not the more obvious charisma that I inherited. I had never heard this before, had never known that my grandfather had seen anything special in me. I didn't listen, my father admitted. I was too set in my beliefs about how things should be, too convinced that Michael, being my son, should follow directly in my footsteps. He looked up, meeting my eyes. I was wrong, and I've cost us both years that we could have been building something better together. It wasn't a perfect apology, but from my father, it was extraordinary. For the first time, I felt like he was seeing me, really seeing me, not just as his daughter or as an employee, but as a person of value and potential in my own right. Where do we go from here? I asked. We start by deciding about Westmore together, he replied. And then, regardless of that outcome, we build the future of this company as true partners. You, me, and your brother. As I left his office that day, I felt a sense of vindication mixed with something unexpected. Hope for a new kind of relationship with my father. Not one based on unquestioning obedience or desperate attempts to earn his approval, but one founded on mutual respect and recognition of each other's strengths. The little girl who had once yearned for her father's approval would always be part of me. But she was no longer in charge. In her place stood a woman who had found her own power, not by defeating her father, but by finding the courage to demand that he see her for who she truly was. The Westmore acquisition talks became the catalyst for a profound transformation in our family dynamics. Over the next few weeks, my father, Michael, and I met regularly to evaluate the offer and consider our options. These strategy sessions, held in the conference room where I had so often been silenced or dismissed in the past, now featured my voice prominently. My father actively sought my financial analysis, and Michael deferred to my expertise when questions arose about valuation or post-acquisition integration. But beyond the professional respect, something deeper was healing. During one late evening as we pored over Westmore's proposal, my father ordered dinner for the three of us, something he had never done before. As we ate together, the conversation drifted from business to personal topics. Michael's new relationship with a law student he'd met at a client event, my recent interest in mountain biking as stress relief, even my father's reluctant admission that he was considering taking actual vacation time for the first time in 15 years. You know, Michael said at one point, a half smile playing on his lips. This is the first time I can remember us having a meal together where nobody stormed off or ended up in tears. My father looked uncomfortable, but he nodded. I wasn't always the easiest person to have dinner with. That's putting it mildly, I replied, but there was no bitterness in my tone now, just acknowledgement of our shared history. I expected perfection, my father admitted, setting down his fork. From myself, from the company, from both of you. It wasn't fair or realistic. Well, Michael said, reaching for his water glass, here's to imperfection and figuring things out together. We all raised our glasses in a toast that somehow felt more significant than the occasion warranted. After 3 weeks of analysis and negotiations, we made our decision about Westmore's offer. Rather than a full acquisition, we crafted a strategic partnership that would give them a minority stake in our company while preserving our operational independence. The deal included access to their broader client base and resources, while they would benefit from our financial governance expertise and innovative models. My father surprised everyone by insisting that I lead the final negotiation meeting with Westmore's executive team. As I presented our counter-proposal in their sleek downtown offices, I caught a glimpse of my father's expression as he watched me from across the conference table. There was unmistakable pride in his eyes, not the conditional approval I had sought for so long, but genuine admiration for my capabilities. The Westmore executives were clearly impressed, and by the end of the day, we had shaken hands on a deal that would transform both companies while securing our family's legacy. As we left their offices, my father placed his hand briefly on my shoulder, a rare physical gesture from him. "You were extraordinary in there," he said simply. "I couldn't have done better myself." Coming from him, there was no higher praise. The partnership with Westmore accelerated our company's growth beyond what any of us had anticipated. With their resources behind us and my financial governance systems providing a solid foundation, we expanded into new markets and added service lines that complemented our core offerings. My team doubled in size, then doubled again within 18 months. Throughout this period of rapid growth, our family relationship continued its careful, sometimes awkward healing process. There were still difficult moments, times when my father reverted to his controlling tendencies, or when Michael fell back into the habit of charm over substance. But unlike before, we now had mechanisms to address these patterns directly, to call each other out with honesty, tempered by growing mutual respect. 1 year after our confrontation in my father's office, we held a company-wide celebration to mark the success of the Westmore partnership and our record financial results. The event was held at an upscale hotel downtown, with all employees and their families invited. As people mingled, enjoying drinks and appetizers, my father clinked his glass to signal a toast. The room quieted as he stepped up to the small podium. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," he began. "This past year has been the most successful in our company's history, and that success belongs to each person in this room." He paused, looking around at the assembled faces, employees who had been with us for decades, new team members who had joined during our recent expansion, and the families who supported them all. "But I want to specifically acknowledge the leadership that has made this possible," he continued, "particularly the contribution of our CFO, my daughter Emma." My heart skipped as all eyes turned toward me. Public acknowledgement from my father was unprecedented. "Many of you know that this company was founded by my father," he said. "What you may not know is that before he passed, he told me that the future of this company would depend on recognizing and nurturing the right talent, regardless of preconceptions or traditional expectations." My father's eyes found mine across the room. It took me far too long to understand what he meant, and even longer to act on that wisdom. He gestured for me to join him at the podium. Surprised, I made my way through the crowd, aware of the approving smiles and nods from colleagues who had witnessed my journey. As I reached his side, my father did something that shocked me completely. He handed me the microphone. "The future of this company is in excellent hands," he said, loud enough for those nearby to hear, though not into the microphone. It always was. I just needed to get out of the way enough to see it. Taking the microphone, I felt a swell of emotion that threatened to overwhelm my composure. I looked out at the faces watching me, many of whom had seen me grow from an undervalued employee to a respected leader, and I saw acceptance, respect, and anticipation for what I would say. "Thank you, Dad," I began, the words feeling strange but right. When I joined this company after college, I never imagined standing here today. The path wasn't always easy, but it brought us to something better than I could have envisioned. I glanced at my father, who was watching me with an expression I'd rarely seen. Openness, without the guard that typically masked his emotions. Success in business, like in families, isn't about avoiding challenges or pretending conflicts don't exist, I continued. It's about facing those challenges honestly, making difficult changes when necessary, and recognizing that different perspectives and strengths make us better together than we could ever be alone. I saw heads nodding throughout the room, particularly among those who had been with the company long enough to witness the transformation in our leadership dynamics. Here's to honest conversations, to growth through discomfort, and to building something that honors the past while creating a better future, I concluded, raising my glass. The room responded with enthusiastic applause. As I handed the microphone back to my father, he surprised me again by pulling me into a brief but genuine hug, perhaps the first since I was a small child. For just a moment, I glimpsed the father I had always wanted, the one who could see and value me for exactly who I was. Later that evening, as the celebration was winding down, I found myself standing on the hotel's outdoor terrace, taking a moment of quiet reflection away from the noise and energy of the party. The city lights spread out below, a tapestry of possibility and life. "Penny, for your thoughts," came Michael's voice as he joined me at the railing. I smiled at my brother, our relationship now more genuine than it had ever been. "Just thinking about how much has changed in a year." "For the better," he agreed, leaning against the railing beside me. "Though I still can't believe Dad actually hugged you in public. I was half expecting the apocalypse to start right after." We both laughed, the shared joke possible only because of the distance we'd traveled from those painful family dynamics. "He's trying," I acknowledged, "in his own limited way." "It's more than I ever thought he was capable of," Michael replied. "And it's because of you, Emma. You forced him to face reality when no one else could." I shook my head. "I just reached my breaking point. It wasn't some grand strategic plan." "Maybe that's why it worked," Michael mused. "It was authentic. You weren't playing games or manipulating the situation. You were just finally standing in your truth." His insight surprised me. My charming, sometimes superficial brother had become more perceptive over the past year, more attuned to emotional undercurrents. "Either way," he continued, "I'm glad you did it. Not just for the company, but for us, for our family. It feels like we're actually becoming a real family, maybe for the first time." The door to the terrace opened, and our father stepped out, looking slightly uncomfortable in social settings as always, but less rigid than he once had been. "There you are," he said, walking over to join us at the railing. "The Westmore executives are asking to speak with both of you before they leave." "We'll be right in," Michael replied, but none of us moved immediately. Instead, we stood together in companionable silence, looking out at the city lights. It struck me that this was the first time I could remember the three of us sharing a quiet moment without tension or power struggles, just three people connected by blood, and now, finally, by mutual respect. "Before we go back in," my father said, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant, "there's something I've been meaning to tell you both." Michael and I exchanged curious glances. "I've been seeing someone," my father continued, looking straight ahead rather than at us. "For about 6 months now. Her name is Diana. She's a retired judge." This was unexpected. Our mother had passed away when I was 16 and Michael 18, and in all the years since, our father had shown no interest in dating or remarrying. "That's great, Dad," Michael said, recovering first from the surprise. "When do we get to meet her?" "Soon," our father replied. "If that's something you'd both be comfortable with." I studied his profile in the dim terrace lighting, realizing that the changes in our professional relationship had opened space for personal growth as well. My father was allowing himself vulnerability, something I had never witnessed before. "I'd like that," I said sincerely. My father nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "She's actually the one who encouraged me to accelerate the succession planning we discussed. She said life is too short to hold on to control past its time." "She sounds wise," I observed. "She is," my father agreed, "much wiser than me in many ways." He turned to face us both directly, which is why, after considerable thought, I've decided to move forward with the transition we discussed. Starting next quarter, Emma will become CEO, Michael will take on the role of Chief Revenue Officer, and I'll step into a chairman position, still involved, but focused on strategic guidance rather than day-to-day operations. Though we had discussed this possibility, hearing it stated as a definite plan sent a surge of emotion through me. It wasn't about the title or position. It was about the completion of a journey from invisibility to full recognition. "Are you sure?" I asked, needing to hear his confirmation. "I've never been more certain of anything," my father replied, his voice steady and clear. "The company needs your leadership, Emma. I should have recognized that much sooner." Michael wrapped an arm around my shoulders. "Just promise you'll give your Chief Revenue Officer a decent office and expense account," he joked, lightening the moment as he always did. "No promises," I shot back with a smile. Our father checked his watch. "We should get back inside. The Westmore people are waiting." As we turned to go, he paused, placing one hand on my shoulder and the other on Michael's. "I'm proud of both of you," he said simply. "Not just for what you've accomplished professionally, but for who you've become, who you've helped me become." It was perhaps the most honest and unguarded thing he had ever said to us. No qualifications, no expectations, just genuine pride and affection. As we rejoined the celebration, I caught sight of my reflection in the glass doors leading back inside. I saw a woman who had learned that establishing boundaries wasn't about defeating others, but about creating space for healthier relationships to grow. A woman who had discovered that her value didn't depend on anyone else's recognition, but who could still appreciate when that recognition finally came. The little girl who had once transferred money without question when her father shouted, "Don't argue, transfer next month's payment too," was gone. In her place stood someone who had found her voice, claimed her power, and in doing so, helped heal not just herself, but her entire family. My father had shouted as if he still owned me, but the truth was, I had always owned myself. I had just needed the courage to remember it.